Hello everyone, I'm Santiago and today I'm gonna be testing Crime Boss Rockay City on the ROG Ally thanks to 505 Games for writing a code of the game. So this game really feels like Payday at home, but as a single player experience I think it's a lot of fun. So 1080p, we're plugged into the wall at 30 watts, there's XeSS and FSR2. FSR2 looks horrible to say the least. It's like having Vaseline all over the screen. And basically the settings are a mix between medium and low. I kept post-processing on medium to have the ambient occlusion and textures on medium to have a little bit of extra definition to the textures. So we apply, remember that we're on 1080p right now. For a game like this, usually my target will be 6 FPS, that's why I lowered the settings so much. And I'm testing this that is more of a turf war kind of deal. And this is one of those UE4 games that doesn't run well at all, considering the visuals, in my opinion at least. So as you can see on 1080p it drops below 60 into the 47 pretty often. With a VRR screen it usually feels good enough to play. But plugged into the wall, maybe using it with the Ally plugged in, my advice is to drop to 900p. So, alright, so as I was saying, 900p plugged into the wall, same settings, maybe medium view distance instead, medium post-processing for ambient occlusion, and the rest like this. Effects on low so we don't have any screen space reflections. And let's get into it once more. Let's see if we're closer to 60. Okay, this is so much better. And again, for a handheld, personally, I just rather... Okay, let me get the Sicario. I rather stay closer to 60, especially in a shooter. So yeah, 900p in my opinion is the way to go, at least when plugged into the wall. But some levels, despite being on 900p, as you can see, can be quite inconsistent. Why is this? Well, the game, when I tried it on my bigger computer, to say it in some way, it used like 14 gigabytes of RAM at points. I have my VRAM set to 5 gigabytes actually, so we only have like 11 gigabytes of RAM, system RAM available. That makes the game stutter in some points, which is annoying. But as you can see, with more enemies in these sections, not the heisting sections, these more turf war sections of the game, you can have those stutters plus the drops in performance. So as I told you before, really doesn't run particularly great. So I think it's time to try 720p instead. 720p is something a little bit different. I increased some of the options to medium, such as foliage, post-processing, view distance. I kept XeSS on performance, which is a pretty low resolution, but we're going to talk about that in a second. So we're in the same section as before, but now as you can see it drops into the 50s instead of the 40s and 50s, but the GPU, as you can probably notice, is not being fully utilized, so we're actually single thread limited when it comes to this game, which is pretty funny actually. We have 8 cores, 16 threads, but it seems to be more single core hungry. So I'd say 720p is ideal for this, but since we're not using the entire GPU, we can crank up the XeSS to quality and keep everything else the same. And it looks significantly better, and performance is basically the same. Alright, so now in handheld, we're doing 720, balanced XeSS, medium view distance, and basically low settings with medium textures. Consider putting textures on low if you experience lots of stuttering. And this is at 20 watts, so we should have like 80 to 90 minutes of battery, 1.5 hours at best. And again, here we're CPU limited. If you look at the GPU usage, it's hitting 90% but not being fully utilized. We're within the VRR window, which is good. But again, in bigger fights like this one, mostly those turf wars is when it drops frames. That's why I'm testing this actually. And man, it drops so hard. I'm impressed when it comes to how it doesn't use more of the CPU, because the GPU usage drops quite significantly. Yeah, I don't know. Not well optimized, I would say. And as you can see, when with less enemies on screen, it stays above 50 way more often. And on the smaller screen, the resolution is okay. But see, those stutters, we are RAM limited actually. We're using 5 gigs of VRAM, and since the total is 16 gigs, we're hitting the limits of all the memory we have available, so the game stutters. So again, consider low textures to get that happening less often. But I know that some of you guys are all about those pixels, so 1080p, quality XeSS, low shadows, low textures, low effects. And this should give you a good experience-ish on 1080p at 20 watts. So you drop into the 40s, whatever, but it feels okay. 40 FPS, if you lock it to 40, is a third of the refresh rate, a third of 120. So if you want as many pixels as you can, this is how you do it. Maybe actually balance XeSS. Since we get CPU limited, why not lower the resolution a tiny bit? But this should give you the sharpest UI, while at the same time keeping a balance of visuals and performance, to say it in some way. Less VRAM usage, so less stutter. But again, it's not ideal, not perfect, and I think it should run a lot better considering the visuals. Maybe that's just me. Alright, so in my opinion, this would be the best setting, to say it in some way. 900p, XeSS balanced, low view distance, maybe keep it on medium, faster TAA, let's put it on default, medium post processing, so we got ambient occlusion, shadows on low, textures on low, effects on medium to have screen space reflections, foliage, FOV at 80 degrees, you can increase it to 90 if you want to, or decrease it if you're one of those crazy people. So we apply this, 900p looks good enough on the smaller screen, and since we're not hitting 60s due to CPU limitation, funnily enough, which doesn't make sense, at least in my opinion, but that's how the game goes, you can go between 40 and 50. 900p I think is the best of both worlds. You get the reflections, you get the better shading on other surfaces, and you still stay within the 40s and the 50s. Sometimes hits 60, but it's pretty rare. Maybe when there's no enemies on screen. This test between the inside the VRR window. Let me revive my teammate. And it basically uses the entire GPU, which is what should happen. The game should be using 100% GPU, even at 720p. But I do not recommend 720p just due to the fact that, again, we are CPU limited, so it doesn't matter if you even drop it to 540p, the game will still drop below 60 due to the... I don't know why the CPU just doesn't want to cooperate. So they need to work on optimization, especially on the CPU side and the RAM usage side. So yeah, in my opinion, 900p is the best balance between visuals, resolution, and performance. And just stay inside the VRR window. Again, this is not a game I would play at 30 FPS. Because you might say, oh well, lock it to 30. Yeah, in a first-person shooter like this one that feels more fast-paced, I just wouldn't even think about playing it at 30 FPS. Just feels wrong. Let's be real here. But they really need to work on the optimization on this one. It's really disappointing from that point of view. Considering it's an Unreal Engine 4 game, I think it should run better considering the visuals. But otherwise, I'm really enjoying the game because I'm more of a solo player. And as you could see, the bots, while I was shooting up with the police, got all the loot inside here. I was basically covering them while they did their job. I didn't have to tell them, hey, steal everything. So they did it for me. And I was able to give them orders, control them if I want to. So that's the main draw for me for the game. That's what attracts me to this game and makes me play small rounds of a few minutes because the rounds are very short. So I pick it up, get into a few matches and then drop it, pick it back later. So yeah, that's my main draw to the game. Payday at home. Instead of a drill, we use a saw. Which is pretty funny. You get the celebrities that are completely unnecessary. When it comes to battery life, you get, we're at the 73% battery at the moment. And well, it's basically an hour and maybe an hour and 10 minutes, something like that. So not super long battery life. And in order to be in a good spot when it comes to the VRR window, I got 900p with the settings that I showed you. Because if you're trying to aim higher than the 40s, you're going to be disappointed because you'll end up CPU limited. The GPU usage won't be any higher. So you're stuck basically between 40 and 60 no matter the settings that you're using. So 900p allows us to have a best of both worlds scenario, which means you can increase the visuals, you can increase the resolution, and you stay within that VRR window with 20 watts of APU power. And you can also do 18 watts. As my conclusion, you can also do so to have a bit more battery life. And you get a few less frames, you drop into the 40s more often. But you get a bit more battery life. Instead of an hour and 20, maybe an hour and 40. But again, do not target 60s, you're not getting there. And for the love of God, do not play this game at 30 FPS.
They're gonna see me coming.
Do yourself a favor. At 30 FPS, it's horrible. But to sum up, I really like the game. I enjoy playing it in short bursts because they are very short heists. And it really doesn't require lots of attention.
Okay, she's open.
And the bots are not useless, basically. But performance, in my opinion, leaves a lot to be desired. Very high RAM usage, very high VRAM usage, so you gotta put it at 5 gigabytes when it comes to VRAM on the ROG Ally, which isn't an issue, it's easy to do. You just go into Armory Crate. But the RAM usage on my main PC, as an example, was like 16 gigabytes, so while this game was out for a year on the Epic Games Store, now it's cheap on Steam. It's hard to recommend from a performance standpoint. If you're a sucker for payday style games like me, I like playing solo, I think this is great. But again, performance leaves a lot to be desired, especially when it comes to visuals. It's not like the game looks photorealistic. Graphics are not bad, but again, considering the visuals, I was expecting more. Especially when it comes to being CPU limited. What the hell? It's not that we're playing an open world game. So at 18 watts, it is like this. We're CPU limited. Do not even attempt 60s because you won't get there consistently. Because again, CPU limitation. But other than that, it's an enjoyable experience in my opinion. It just needs to be optimized further, at least in my opinion. Which hopefully happens, but I'm not holding my breath for that to happen. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again to 505 Games for providing a code. And if there's any updates on performance, I'll let you know. Because I've been playing this game for I think 7 hours already on Steam and more than 10 hours on the Epic Games Store. So thank you for watching and I'll see ya next time. Bye guys, thanks for watching.